초동 대응은 빠를수록 완벽할수록 이렇게 좋다. 그리고 그것에 지금 사활이 걸려 있다. 이렇게 저는 말씀드리고 싶습니다.
The daily average of confirmed COVID-19 cases in Seoul is reported as 2.9 despite a series of mass infection crises. Seoul has a population of over 10 million. It is a densely populated metropolis with a high risk of virus infection, but no city lockdown has been made. Fast preemptive response and transparent provision of information. Centering on these two principles, the Seoul Metropolitan Government cooperated closely with Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The city government has operated the Seoul Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters for 24 hours a day from the early stages to monitor new infectious diseases and disinfected public transportations and facilities used by many citizens and visitors. Seoul, while monitoring the virus, had also prepared necessary countermeasures against the COVID-19, such as citizens' guidelines, virus testing, contacts management, and quarantine treatment. To contain the virus to not spread to the local community, Seoul was committed to conducting epidemiological investigation, quarantine treatment, and identifying and tracking patients and contacts. Seoul now becomes a model for cities around the world in terms of the COVID-19 quarantine measures. At the request of cities overseas, the Seoul Metropolitan Government opened an online platform entitled CAC, which stands for Cities Against COVID-19, on April 9th, and has been sharing all information on the COVID-19 quarantine know-hows and countermeasures Seoul has taken so far. However, Seoul has not completely succeeded in COVID-19 quarantine. The first crisis came to Seoul in March, after the country's first outbreak of COVID-19 in January. A mass infection occurred at a call center in Guro District.
서울에서 발생한 집단 감염 가운데 최대 규모의 사례가 나왔습니다.
27명이 추가로 확진된 겁니다.
집단 발생 즉각 대응반을 구성해서 역학 조사를 실시하고 있습니다. 위중하게 이 상황을 인식하고 추가 확산을 막기 위해서 최선을 다하고 있습니다.
Using mobile access records and credit card transactions, the city government identified more than 1,000 contacts and conducted tests for COVID-19. The government asked for citizens for active cooperation for self-quarantine to prevent a second or third transmission of the virus to the community. Call centers and public facilities across Seoul were disinfected thoroughly.
서울시는 시민 모두가 저희들이 그 요청한 대로의 생활 방역을 철저히 해주셨고, 확진 환자 유증상이 발생했을 시에는 각 보건소에 적극적으로 검사를 임함으로써 저희들이 효과를 거두지 않았나 이렇게 생각을 합니다.
After the switch from the social distancing to the distancing in daily life in May, an unexpected mass infection occurred at clubs in Itaewon. Based on the experience of mass infection at the Guro call center, the city government tracked down the Itaewon visitors working together with the National Police Agency and the mobile service companies. The Seoul Metropolitan Government immediately introduced the anonymous testing and operated additional walk-through testing stations.
저희가 서울시에서 4개 드라이빙 스루를 운영하면서 수많은 예신 기자들이 취재 요청이 있어서 중수도령 쪽에서 지침도 협조가 오거나 그런 걸 많이 제공한 걸로 알고 있습니다. 서울시에서는 6월 초부터 선제적 검사를 해가지고 학생이라든지 어린 시민들, 감염에 취약한 분들이 있는 장소들을 찾아가서 선제 검사가 지금 검토 중입니다.
As the number of confirmed cases is rising, Seoul is once again checking quarantine countermeasures against COVID-19 and conducting preemptive virus testings. The distancing in daily life has been further tightened. We must stay alert to this unpredictable virus.
And they are going through a sort of more stringent lockdown than we've had here in South Korea, because the South Korean government and I guess the Seoul government have dealt with the coronavirus in kind of unique ways, particularly in terms of testing and contact tracing and, targeted quarantining. The country's been a little bit more successful in keeping the number of cases and the number of deaths down. Well, I think the most important part of, so-called K quarantine is the contact tracing that needs to take place. In order to contain the virus, you need to know where it came from. And that means that, Western countries, the publics in Western countries are going to need to sacrifice some of their privacy in order for contact tracing to be really effective. That's the biggest lesson that I think other countries and other governments can learn from South Korea's experience in containing the virus.
Along with the immediate response of the government, dedication of the frontline medical workers, and participation of citizens who practice social distancing made it possible for Korea to be a role model in quarantine measures. Yet, COVID-19 will leave much of an impact on our society. It has changed our daily lives, and economic and social damages are also significant. For any possible outbreak in the future, what should we do to prepare? For the world after COVID-19, how can cities in the world cooperate with each other? Now, the world is paying attention to Seoul's next move.
그래 나 이곳에서 모든 걸 준비해 기대해 행복해질 테니까 Oh so 그래 나 이곳에서 나 언제나 너를 듣고 바라보고 안을게
Good morning, afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the discussion on culture. I'm Jessica Leigh, and it's my great honor and privilege for being the moderator for today's session. And before we begin, we would like to extend our sincere gratitude for joining us today at this virtual and also international conference. In the outbreak of COVID-19 era, More than 2,500 cultural events have been canceled or postponed in Korea, and the damage amounted to 60 billion won. So today, let us invite experts from home and abroad and discuss about if there's any solution to this ever-worsening crisis in the field of culture and arts. And now, first of all, please allow me to introduce our panelists from home and abroad. First of all, we're joined by Mr. Kim Sung-kyu, the president of Sejong Center for the Performing Arts. He has been communicating with the culture and arts industry through serving as a director of Korea Arts Management Service. Thank you. And next, we have Ms. Ho Yoon-jung, a professor of Korean traditional music at Seoul National University. Professor is currently a representative of Bukchon Changwoo Theater. Thank you once again for your time. And next, we have Ms. Baik Seon-hye, the Director of Urban Social Research at Seoul Institute. She is an expert in the culture and arts fields who has been engaged in research and policy activities on performing arts. Thank you. And next is Mr. Yoo Yeon-sik, a Deputy Mayor for Cultural Affairs at Seoul. He is an administrator who has been striving to achieve the vision of Seoul culture of citizen participation with the aim of a city of culture and arts where citizens are cultural subjects. Thank you for your time and presence today. And the next, we're joined by Mr. Christophe Girard, the Deputy Mayor of Paris for Culture. And today, he will be presenting about the case of non-face-to-face performances in Paris. Nice to meet you. Thank you very much for your time. Hello.
Morning. Hello. Morning. Hello.
Thank you. And we're also joined by Ms. Petra Frank, the Dean of School of Arts at the University of Gothenburg. And she has prepared a presentation of the case of Sweden. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you very much for your time. And next is Ms. Ilana Schimil, the Executive Director of Tonale Orchestra Zurich, which is an orchestra that represents the German-speaking region with around 160 years of history. Nice to meet you.
Hello.
Hello. And next, we have Mr. Wolfgang Fink, an artistic advisor of Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra via online, and he's an expert in the culture and arts industry who was a former CEO of the Bamberg Symphony Orchestra in Germany. Hello, sir.
Good morning. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, good afternoon.
Yeah. Nice to meet you, and I'm also looking forward to hearing from you. And last but not least, we have Ms. Jordana Leigh, the director of David Rubenstein Atrium at Lincoln Center. And today, she will be giving us a presentation on the case of New York City. Okay, so now we will begin the session, which is the discussion on culture. 네, 그럼 지금부터 본격적으로 오늘.
Alright, now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to begin the session on culture. This session consists of 3 programs.
먼저 첫 번째는
In the first program, we will be discussing the cases of Untact performances in culture and arts.
두 번째는 또
Second, we will be hearing from the Untact performance cases of 4
논의를 진행하려고 합니다.
cities.
또 마지막으로는
And in the third program, we will be discussing the impact of COVID-19 on the culture and art scene and also the prospect of Untact performances in the future. And now with that, we are going to begin.
도시사회
Yes, we will first invite Ms. Baik Seon-hye, Director of Urban Social Research at the Seoul Institute. She will deliver her presentation. Yes, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Baik Seon-hye from the Seoul Institute. I'll talk about the prospects and tasks of non-face-to-face performing arts in the post-corona era. This will be the order of my contents today. First, I'll take you through the current status of culture and arts after corona-19 and talk about the contraction that we have seen. I'll talk about the spread of online performing arts and changes in behavior their consumption and talk about future prospects as well. Now, this is the current status. I think the arts field is probably one of the hardest hit industries in the world from COVID-19. Festivals, performances, most of the cultural and artistic fields have pretty much been put on temporary hold and everything has been suspended. According to UNESCO, about 128 countries have closed down cultural facilities because of safety concerns. As you know, the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra, the Metropolitan Opera House in New York, and Broadway have all been suspended. The Louvre Museum, Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art and Museum, or Art in New York have all been closed as well. Korea is no exception. We started out with a corona level of alert that was at caution in January, but then it was quickly escalated to serious, and a very intense social distancing campaign was engaged in, and pretty much all performances and festivals were canceled or postponed indefinitely. We have since transitioned to what's called daily life distancing, but with a spattering of more corona outbreaks in Korea, a lot of these cultural facilities have closed down once again. Of course, social distancing is absolutely necessary to stop the spread of COVID-19. But this practice of social distancing, of course, is a direct hit to the performing arts field, especially those that are staged within within enclosed space. According to the Federation of Artistic and Cultural Organizations of Korea, more than 2,500 art events have been canceled or postponed, and the damage amount was 52.3 billion won. And 1,614 events were canceled or postponed just in Seoul, and the damage amount is 26.7 billion won. Tourism, of course, has been harder hit, but the negative effects on the performing arts field is growing greater. You look at the number of bookings and sales in the major performance areas on the bottom. As you can see, as of April, bookings are just 13% of January levels. Sales are just 1/10 of January levels. So I think Corona-19 has revealed the vulnerability of the cultural and arts fields. The artists are usually working independently or part of very small businesses, and they're especially vulnerable in financial crisis. So UNESCO has said that although the artistic field is one of the first hard-hit areas from Corona-19, unfortunately, it does not take priority in emergency support policies by the government. It eventually, many artists are expected to lose their jobs. The fact that Cirque du Soleil fired 95% of its employees in March shows just how serious the crisis is in the field of culture and arts. Fortunately, though, the state government of Quebec has recently promised about $200 million in support to Cirque du Soleil, so that is very fortunate. Of course, COVID-19 revealed the vulnerability not just in culture and arts, but in every aspect of society. But as you can see, UNESCO is pointing out that actually the culture and arts field is even more vulnerable, and the unfolding crisis risks deepening inequalities and rendering communities vulnerable. It's fortunate that in Germany, special emergency support aid has now been provided to the artist community. And I think everything that has happened prompts us to rethink about the value of art and culture. Now, against this background, we're seeing the spread of online performances. I think it's quite positive. A lot of people are now enjoying online performances. The Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra opened up its digital concert hall to the public free of charge and broadcast its planned Bartók concerto for orchestra live from its digital concert hall, audience free, and I think it was quite impactful. The New York Metropolitan Opera is offering one free opera performance per day through its streaming services. And the Rotterdam Philharmonic Orchestra released a video on YouTube titled From Us to You, Beethoven Symphony No. 9, a mosaic of the self-quarantine members of the orchestra performing. It was very inspiring to 2.82 million viewers around the world. Well, in Korea, there are many efforts by the public side to provide financial support so that different art centers can stream performances online. For example, the Sejong Center for the Performing Arts provided what was called Cheer Up concert online, and the Seoul Arts Center has an initiative called SAC on Screen. It's filming various performances in cinema form and providing the streams online. And the National Theater also has provided live performances of 6 of their original theater plays. And you see other examples where there have been many online performances and live broadcasts provided. There are mostly 2 forms. First, broadcasting already produced content or recordings of previous performances is one type. For example, SAC on Screen has received good acclaim because these are very high quality pre-production pieces that are being released online. The second type is streaming live performances online, so actually performing online in real time.
예술가 입장에서는
Many different types of attempts are being made to test out different formats, different types of online streaming, filming and broadcasting of performances. So that was the current context. Now let's look at what kind of changes we have seen in terms of consumption of culture.
사회적 거리두기에 따라 안전한 개인 공간.
So with social distancing, a lot of people are choosing to enjoy culture and arts in their own personal space. So rather than going out to the museums or movie theaters or concert halls, well, in fact, they cannot. So a lot of them are resorting to OTT services. For example, Netflix has become quite big. The number of online or domestic users in Korea actually has grown 22% in March, a significant increase from February. We now have 4.63 million domestic Netflix users in Korea, and total usage time has increased significantly as well. And recently, some credit card companies have released some credit cards that provide discount services if you're viewing certain pieces on Netflix or YouTube. This has led to the coining of many new words. Home ludes, row number 1 seat in the master bedroom, for example. And I think one good thing about the spread of this type of online performance culture is that it actually provides for real-time communication between the viewing audience and the producer or the artist. For example, as part of SAC on Screen, when some live performances were streamed online, for example, or recordings of past performances when they were streamed online, the viewers could actually chat with the producers or some of the featured artists, and looking at the conversation that went back and forth was really very interesting. But whether this type of experience will be long-lived, whether the people who are enjoying this free access to online performance will later on continue to enjoy the performing arts, I think it is in question. So we have to give that a great deal of thought. And streaming services rely on smartphones, PCs, or TVs. So those who do not have access to these types of digital devices actually can be left out. So that leads us to think about the matter of digital accessibility as well. Is it equitable? Does everybody have access? Is also something that we have to think about. We have to think whether the offer content is also satisfying actual demand or need is something that we should think about as well. Moving on, let's look at the perspective of creation of performing arts.
다양한 시도들이 존재해 왔습니다.
Before COVID-19, many artists have been making use of new types of digital technology. They've also been using the online space as a new venue for their art as well. And according to a survey that took place in 2018 of about 3,000 people in the field of culture and arts, 73.7% of the respondents had said that they were willing to use technologies, digital technologies, for their creative activities. There was a great deal of willingness. If you look at the digital guidelines that were released by UNESCO, they point out that parties shall support new forms of creativity in the digital space, provide direct support to artists and other cultural professionals working with digital tools, establish new training programs and educational curricula for artists and other professionals as well. So I think the use of digital technology had already been taking place, but with COVID-19, I think the transition has become even more accelerated, whether we like it or not. So in the face of COVID-19, online performances for the time being are serving as a substitute for field art, but it's not very likely that online performances will completely replace field art in the future, because real-time interaction and connection between the artist and audience members on the field is very important. It cannot be replaced with technology. And also, simply filming live performances and reformatting into film form may cause some confusion in terms of the identity of the genre. Is it a live performance or is it a movie genre? So that's also something that we have to think about as well. With COVID-19, discussions on the future of performing arts have begun in earnest. I think we have much to invest in and to think about. For example, right now, there's just free disclosure of content that relies on government funding. But rather than just simply filming and transmitting the performance, it's important to consider the method of direction, how the work should be directed to better communicate with the audience. And we have to think about new formats that go beyond the traditional proscenium arch stage format. We also have to think about the safety of the artists. As you know, the practice of art involves close contact between artists, so that can be quite intense and dangerous due to concerns over a transmission of COVID-19. So that should also be thought about as well. Let's think about performing arts in terms of distribution. What kind of changes there are? Online represents a new extended distribution platform for performing arts. It increases access to performing arts. The digital native generation, the young people, are very good about using smart devices. And so we think that online platforms that really overcome the limitations of time and space will continue to grow. And online performances will continue to grow as well. Another positive effect from the spread of digital technology and online performances is that artists can reach out and attract new audience members as well. Students who are fledgling artists can find audiences for their work. For example, the Korea National Institute of Arts have what's called a K-Arts Online Hope Concert, where the students actually can stage their work. So it gives them an audience, and also it can be used as their portfolio later on as well. However, we need to prepare for certain problems, such as unfairness and polarization of certain online platforms. It takes a lot of money in order to be competitive with online content worth seeing. This can result in a greater gap between the rich and the poor. And we have to be guarded against a winner-take-all type of structure. And we also have to pay attention to the rights and copyrights of creators as well. It's not just the artists themselves, but other staff members as well, the producers, who also are very deeply involved in the process of producing the performance. Their rights, their remuneration is very important. And this is reflected in UNESCO's Digital Environment Guidelines, which recommends that a fair and equitable remuneration system for artists and cultural professionals, transparency in the distribution of income, respect for protection of intellectual property rights should be guaranteed as well. And we need to also provide some kind of a archiving platform so that all of the performances that are being shared online are accumulated and not volatile, just disappearing afterwards. We also have to make sure that our performance halls are also fitted for online performances in the future. We have to incorporate digital transformation from the initial design phase of the venue halls. And we have to be mindful of safety against communicable diseases like COVID-19 in the design of these types of venue halls. I think we have much to do, but although we are facing crisis, I think we should find ways to turn this crisis into an opportunity as well. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. We do have some applause from the studio here in Korea, but thank you very much to Ms. Baek. Now we'll move on to our panel discussants to hear their views. Because of the time limitation, please keep your comments under 3 minutes, please.
Now, the first question is to Mr. Yoo Yeon-sik, Deputy Mayor for Cultural Affairs. Now, please briefly tell us about the Seoul Metropolitan City's cases as well as the policy. Now, yes, thank you. Now, as Ms. Baek has just mentioned, the culture and arts industry has been heavily hit by COVID-19. So performances and exhibitions, many of them have been suspended or cancelled. So much so that many of the artists are now suffering difficulties in their livelihood. Now, given the situation, the city of Seoul is trying to help out the artists, and by doing so, revitalize the culture and arts industry, at least maintain the life of the industry, because we believe that doing so would be instrumental in maintaining the life of the society itself. Now, because of this, we have allocated about 11 billion won in budget to provide support to the artists in creative fields in different genres so that they can continue with their creative work and also publish them, either to exhibit them or to put them on stage. So, for example, theater or classical music, ballet, musicals. So, in the different genres, we are providing support so that the artists can maintain their creative work and also to showcase them. And also for the citizens to be able to enjoy such performances or exhibitions. But of course, more has to be done. And that is why we have also allocated about 10 billion won anew to provide further support to the arts and culture industry. Well, for example, now just like the New Deal of the American case. So for example, similar to the public arts project. So for example, public arts like public sculpture. So in order to extend support to the artists, we are receiving ideas for public arts and also are trying to install artworks in public areas. And also for the new rising artists and up-and-coming artists, now they could also be struggling. So we are trying to provide support by leasing their works to be showcased in public buildings or space. And we are also thinking about how to provide support to the performance sectors as well as the publishing industry, like bookstores. And we concluded that purchasing more books would be one way of supporting them. So we are trying also to buy more books so that we can provide support to the writers as well as the publishing industry. Not only that, the design sector is also struggling. So since COVID-19, in order to also provide support to the designers, we have also had a design competition regarding changes in the lifestyle. And the participating designers were also paid contribution fees. So not only that, we are also doing other things to provide support to the culture and arts industry. But of course, we do realize that we need to do more. So we will continue to ponder ways to provide support specific to the culture and arts industry. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So he has explained about how the city is trying to support the artists so that we can also maintain life in our society in general.
Next, we would like to ask Ms. Ilona Schimel. Switzerland, of course, is the center of classical art and concerts. Have you seen any changes in Switzerland due to COVID-19?
Oh, yes, of course. At first, I wanted to say very good afternoon, and I'm happy to join this webinar, this conference with you in South Korea and all the guests from abroad. So we have a huge change, of course. Also, we started with other formats. We started with internet productions and streamed everything what we can do with smaller ensembles. So we had only quintets of our huge orchestra on stage at the beginning, and we streamed also performances without any audience. But I must say now we are coming back to reality, and we are starting in 2 weeks with our season. Of course, it's a completely other flexible season. We will end up with 2 weeks in June with our music director, Paavo Järvi. And I can just say that we start with the small ensemble. So we will have 22 string players on stage. And then afterwards, we will have 32 wind players on stage with different repertoire. And we change the repertoire in between. We are offering concerts without any intermission. So we try to have very short formats, and we play 3 up to 4 times a day. This means we have to find regulations for everyone, also very strict regulations, safety regulations. And these regulations we found out national-wide, and we did this together with the government in Switzerland and with the Ministry of Cultural Affairs in Switzerland, so that the regulations for all the musicians, of course, have changed, that we are working with a social distance of 2 meters between each player, and that we also found regulations for the public. And I think this is a huge challenge, to come back on stage live, face to face. Of course, it's a new form. It's a new form of reality, I must say, and it's a new form of normality. So it's nothing like it was before. But we are absolutely convinced that we have to start again now, and that we start even with conditions which are not the best ones if you think about sound quality, if you think about the question and the relevance and also the choice of repertoire for a normally huge symphony orchestra, which has normally 104 players. So this means that we are working with very small groups at the beginning, but I think it is absolutely worth to start now face to face, and also to start with an audience again, and to make sure for the audience there's nothing which we can compensate with internet. I think it is wonderful what we found out with the media, with the internet, but I think this is something which we should add, and we should use all these formats, all these technology in addition to what we can do on stage. So I see it in a parallel way, that we have to find a new way to come back, and that the most important thing is trust. that we find trust for everyone, for our employees, for the musicians, for the management team, that everyone knows the rules, how to come back into a concert hall, how to come back on stage, how to use and to deal with the audience. And the last thing I wanted to express is that we need a huge kind of flexibility. Flexibility concerning the programming, flexibility concerning formats, flexibility concerning financial items, flexibility concerning also contracts of the musicians. So we have also a lot of discussions with our unions, of course, because we have to make sure that it is not easy to come back on stage and think it is the same like in February or March 2020, because there are so many things which have changed. And I feel that the flexibility also with the musicians is growing, and that we find a way to come together. And of course, at the beginning, musical-wise, it's a little bit of compromise in terms not of quality, but in terms of repertoire. And we have also to find compromises for the audience, because we are starting with a very, very small audience. 300 people are only allowed to come into our hall. Normally our concert hall has 1,230 seats, so it's just a percentage of 25% who are allowed to come back to this hall. But we will extend that until August, September this year. And I do hope, I keep my fingers crossed, that we come back with 500 or 600 people in the audience. And to reach a certain amount of people around the city, around Switzerland, and also in the world, of course, we stream these kinds of concerts as well. So this means we have in the audience a small audience, but we add a very large audience by streaming, and we give them the opportunity to follow our new form of music productions and of music making. And of course, normally our business, our cultural business, is used to be very close, to work in a close manner. And now to come to a certain distance is something which is a big, big challenge for everyone. But I feel we should start now. We should trust the possibility that we can guarantee a certain safety with a protection concept for everyone, with contact tracing, with all these aspects to find out how we can go on with COVID, and that we will have a future where we can deal also with the next huge challenges concerning a new virus, a new pandemic. I think we all have learned that the technical support is very, very helpful, that the internet saved our musical possibilities during the last weeks and months, but there's no compensation for a face-to-face or live concert. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your meaningful words. 네, 스위스에서도 역시나 비대면 공연이 또 활발해지고 있고 이런 변화에
Yes, thank you very much. So non-face-to-face performances have been increasing, and there have been lots of safety protocols in place. But now, actual real live performances are also starting as well. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, now we'll go to Professor Hall. So now, Professor Hall, what do you think are the changes among the perceptions in citizens regarding performance and culture? Well, now a lot of good things have been said already. So now then, as an actor on the field, and then also as someone who is directly engaged in the industry, because I am a director of a theater. So now I would like to share with you some voices from the field. Yes, a lot of the artists are struggling. They are financially struggling. Their livelihood is under threat, and their artistic activities have come to a halt. And now many of the theaters, small theaters in the private sector, are shutting down because they cannot put up performances, so they cannot keep managing their theater because they cannot get rent, so then they have to shut down. Now, for the small theaters, I would say that they are like the ponds of art in the community, and we see that these ponds are drying up. And also, many local artists who are serving as the vibrant lifeline in the different regions. Now, they also have to stop their activities. Now, of course, earlier, there was explanation about the emergency aid to artists, and yes, so it is providing a bit of breathing room to the artists, it is true. But then we see that many of the performances are being replaced by online Untact performances. So rather than the permanent outcome of the phenomenon, but if we are to go back to the pre-COVID situation, then well, still we see that many of the artists are also even being excluded from this. So yes, there is also this kind of wealth gap in the online era in the culture and performance industry. So now then in the future, if the culture and art scene is shrinking like this, and well, I do not want to even imagine the times when the culture and art scene is going to shrink so much. But at least today, until we can go back on stage for offline performances, there's really little to do for the artists and the actors. So of course, there would be a lot of difficulties in producing performances for online. It costs a lot of budget, and you also need to have a lot of preparation. So many of them are just waiting for the theater to open up again. Now, despite the current difficulties, I remain hopeful because whenever crises or challenges occur, then artists have always led the way in finding a new way. I would say that is the strength of art, and it is from the strength of art that people also derive their own strength so that they can stand back on their feet again. And another thing that I am hopeful about is now through the COVID crisis, now there are a lot of people who cannot go to performance halls, the audiences who cannot go to the halls, and they cannot see the performances in real time. And now they are yearning for the stage. In other words, they are yearning to go back to the performance halls. So they want to see the performances with their own eyes again. So there is this yearning and pining for offline performances. So this bodes well for the future. So perhaps we cannot go back to pre-COVID as it used to be exactly, but then still we sense this yearning, this passion for stage performances in real life again, and I believe that that is going to remain the driver for people to start enjoying performances again once the COVID crisis recedes. Well, thank you very much, Professor Hall. So she talked about the strength of art, the power of art, and I do hope that we will be able to overcome this crisis with that power of art.
Yes, next Mr. Wolfgang Pink, who is advisor to the Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra. Can you also talk about what kind of changes you have seen post-COVID-19, of course?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for having me, and hello to everybody. I think we are now arriving, or just starting with the second phase of the corona crisis, and we should consider what happened until now and where we currently are. I think the arts world, as well as the whole world, was hit very, very strongly and completely unexpectedly by this crisis. We couldn't imagine that such a thing would happen, that we would have this lockdown literally on all stages of our life. But now we have experienced this shock and are looking forward. And I think one of the most important things, both for the arts scene, for the audience and for the musicians and all the artists, is a certain predictability. We couldn't predict the crisis. We were hit very strongly. So we need to find, I think, we who are responsible in this field of arts administration, arts organization, we need to find ways, we need to find strategies, how we can predict a little bit what will happen in the next month, maybe even years to come. So it is very important to adjust to a kind of new reality. And of course, we know how we can combat the virus, which is distancing. We need to follow these rules very carefully. And I was always very impressed, particularly in Korea, that people know what responsibility means. If you have a cold, you don't come to your office without a mask. You wear a mask. That's a reality, a normality already in your country. That was very different in Europe. People really had to adjust to that. They were not used to it, but slowly but surely, people are adjusting to this new normality. And I mean, I can talk particularly about the classical music scene. And for once, only for once, I would say we can take advantage that the audience, both audience and artists in this field, are very aware of how to behave correctly. Our audience is used to be silent, not to speak during performances. Our audience is very, very disciplined. So I think we can really dare to look on this, how we adjust to this new normality. We have a clear distinction in our concert halls and opera houses and in our venues between backstage and front of the house. So there's a clear border between audience and artists. So I think we can really, with a little bit of imagination, we can organize this new normality without threatening anybody, neither the audience nor the artists. So I think this is very important to look at this carefully, what can be done in a reasonable way to slowly increase both number of artists on stage and number of audience in the audience. So I think there are many, many possibilities to adjust to this new normality. I think as well, it is like all crises, like all major changes in our lives, this is not only a threat. Of course, I know that many, many artists are struggling, but it is also an opportunity, really an opportunity to change some of our truth or behaviors that are so, in our minds that we don't think out of the box. I think now it's the time to think out of the box, which means exactly what Ilona Schmiel already said. We have to think about the huge repertoire of music, which is not only big orchestra. I always advocated very strongly with in the orchestras I've worked with, we are not only a big orchestra of 104 musicians or 110 or 98, we are also an ensemble of ensembles, i.e. we can literally present all kinds of music, from trio through octet, through chamber orchestra, through smaller sized orchestras. So there are many, many opportunities for us now with regard to repertoire, with regard to formats. I always thought it's very exciting in a context of an orchestra concert to change to a small format, to a quartet, to a sextet, whatever. So there are really new opportunities to rethink who we are, what we are, and particularly also for whom we perform. So I strongly advocate to be optimistic and to get out of this crisis with new ideas, with new approaches. One last idea or proposal: we always think of season as a season of 1 year. I think because predictability is so difficult, to foresee the future is so difficult, we should maybe look at a season of just 4 months. This is our new season model. We present 2 or even 3 seasons throughout the year. That makes us much more flexible. And another point that Ilona spoke about, flexibility. We need to be much more flexible. And in this respect, we can make use of these many experiences we are now making with digital means, with digital tools. But the digital experience, of course, cannot, never, ever replace the face-to-face, the real concept, the real experience. This is very, very important.
Thank you, Doctor, for sharing your words. 네, 사실 이렇게 핑크 박사님께서 말씀을 해주신 것처럼
So, as Mr. Pink has said, we are now faced with the unprecedented COVID crisis. But I think now it's a very important time to think about what happens next, and we should explore strategy going ahead. Now we'll move on.
Now, this presentation will be delivered by Mr. Kim Sung-kyu, president of the Sejong Center for the Performing Arts. So he will tell us about the Untact performance cases of Seoul.
반갑습니다. 세종무대관 사장 김성규입니다. 발표에 앞서서 잠시
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Kim Sung-kyu, president of Sejong Center. Now, I would like to start off with a video presentation.
우리 사회가 다 같이 힘을 내.
Well, we were hoping that the entire society would cheer up again. So we thought that maybe by putting up the performances, we can also help the artists do their work. So perhaps this was the only thing that we could do to help. You could watch the performances from your very room. Now, because all the performances have been cancelled, the performance industry was struggling. So we wanted to create these Untact online performances to provide to the audience and also to help out with the artists.
네, 반갑습니다.
Hello, everyone.
저는 오늘 세종문화회관의
Today, I will be discussing the cases of the Sejong Center for the Performing Arts to discuss the way of development for culture and arts in the post-COVID era. Now, at Sejong Center, we have planned for what's called the Cheer Up concert. Now, before I continue with my discussion, let me just briefly introduce the Sejong Center. Now, this is an institution financed by the city of Seoul. We have a grand theater with over 3,000 seat capacity. We also have arts theater and also in total 4 performance halls. Not only that, the Sejong Center has 9 art groups, including the ballet troupe as well as the choir. So about 30% of the performances that we put up on stage are produced by Sejong Center. Now today I will talk about the Cheer Up concert as an example, and I would also like to discuss some other Untact online performance cases of the city of Seoul, and then discuss a bit about the future direction of Untact performances. Now first is about the Untact performance, Untact online performance. Now with the year 2020 upon us, COVID-19 outbreak was also upon us. And then now we are seeing that the cases recede, and then now at the end of February, the cases began to spike. And this also alarmed the performance industry. Now, in order to maintain the performances as much as possible, we first carried out disinfection work in the facilities. But still, as COVID was raging on, we had to cancel performances in order to participate in the social distancing campaign. And also, more people are staying home. as part of the social distancing campaign. A lot of people working from home. So then we are wondering what we can do in terms of utilizing the space that we have so that we can better serve the art industry as well as the citizens. So then between the months of March to April, we plan for this Cheer Up concert. Now at this time we had two main questions. Now first was which performance groups were going to put their performances up on stage. Now we also have our own planning capacity and also the production capacity. So among the performances that were scheduled to be performed between the months of from the months of February to April, there were 4 performances. There were a number of performances that we had planned on our own, so we decided to showcase 4 of them. And then we also decided to give opportunities to the outside performance groups. So we also received the list of performances that were canceled in this time. So not only those who were scheduled to perform at Sejong Center, but also the performances that were canceled outside Sejong Center. So we also selected some of them to be performed on stage at Sejong Center. And the second question was, now because we are a performance hall, we could not stream or broadcast these performances on our own. So we first needed to find a partner for streaming. The first one that we contacted was Naver, the biggest portal site of Korea, and they already had the V Live streaming channel. And also in order to make sure that we also had the diversity in the channels, we decided to utilize our own YouTube channel as well as the Seoul City's YouTube channel. Not only that, there is a channel, so LGU Plus, now they also have the VR implementation capability by utilizing state-of-the-art filming technique so that the audience would also be able to enjoy them in a more lively manner. And also we will continue to work with them so that we can continue to put up these online performances even after COVID goes away. Now, some of the performances that we have planned, you can see that now in total there were 16 performances, but then you can see that the genres are quite diverse, running the gamut from classical music to popular music and classical orchestra of Korea and musical, stage theater, ballet. And now, as the result, there were about 18,000 in the audience on average, and we have had a cumulative viewing by about 300,000 people. And the biggest of them, the most of them flocked to classical music performance, and then followed by ballet with about 19,000 people watching the performance. And also another characteristic that we could see was the different time. Now for the opera, because we had the opera performance as well as the classical music performances, so we thought that the audience would be concentrated in the evening time, and it is true. So the performances starting at 7:30, there was the biggest audience. But then also what is important is that also at 3 p.m. and also at 5 p.m., a lot of people were still watching the performances, over 10,000 of them. So this is going to be a very important information, very important implication for us as we plan for these online performances down the road. Then also between weekdays and weekend, there were little differences. So between 18,000 to 19,000 watching at the same time on average. And then also another important fact or another important characteristic is, now this is about the response of the audience, so let us watch a little bit. So now we have been taking a break for about 70 days now, and now this is such an excellent opportunity for us to put up an excellent performance. Now if we are to stream this on the internet, then I think it's good that because it would be more accessible to the people, so I think that's an advantage. So as you can see from the interview, now these are the artists, and the cheer up concert. So from both sides, both the actors, the artists, and the audience, they both welcomed this cheer up concert, and we could see that they were really hungry for this.
한 결과를 보면
And the result of the cheer up concert shows that
지속적으로
now the
힘내는 콘서트가 그 언론에 노출되기 시작했고
we could also get a lot of media coverage
무려
for the cheer up concert. So there were over 330 press articles about the cheer up concert, and there was also exposure on the broadcasting channels. So then, in total, there were over 300 media exposure across 30 days. So this means that on average more than 10 media coverage per day.
공연을 해보니까
And next is, now after having done the online performances, then what are some of the characteristics that we have identified in the Untact online performances? Now first is about the technical features. So once again, let us watch the video.
왼쪽에서 보시는 거는
On the left-hand side, this is an ordinary video. On the right-hand side, this is 5G implementation using VR technology. So then, for individual members of the audience, they can pick the angle that they want to watch. So we have streamed it as such so that the members of the audience will be able to see this in the way they want.
이러한 기술은
Now, thanks to this technology,
위치에 따라서
now you would know that in the offline stage, in the offline performance hall, you would get different acoustics, you would get different angles depending on where you're seated. But then now, when you watch this online, then you are sitting at the front row, right in front of your monitor. So I would say that this is providing equal opportunities to the audience. And the second finding was that now the online performances enabled us to move away from space or region. So whether you are in your office or subway or at home, you were able to watch the performance if you wanted to.
볼 수밖에 없었던
So this freed the people from the physical confines of a concert hall. And the third finding was that it enabled interactive communication. So now, in the offline performances, you're not able to communicate with the audience sitting next to you, and also no communication between the artist and the audience. But then, in this case, as you can see on the right-hand side, even during the performances, you can continue to express yourselves through the mobile phone or through the computer. And instead of applauding, you can give hearts. And the number of hearts were equivalent to the number of applauses. So we were also able to count the number of applauses. So we were able to find this hope or the possibility of interactive communication. And one more thing is, not only the Sejong Center, but then also a lot of the performance halls are streaming these Untact online performances. And let me just show you two places. Now, of course, Wolfgang is here, but then now Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra, the SP online stage, so they have also planned a similar thing. And then also EBS, they are also doing this 360-degree VR education. So now for the Seoul Philharmonic Orchestra, not only the performance in the concert hall, but then they have also showed their performances from the rehearsal room. So quite a unique experience. The next is the Seoul Donhwamun Traditional Theater. So it's a very small, specialized theater, and for as many as 70 days. So in 4 segments, now they are streaming on YouTube as well as the Naver channel. Now my next topic is about the outlook on Untact online performances. So of course, these streaming performance services had always existed. But then now we can see that through the COVID-19 crisis this time, now we were able to attest the possibility of the online performances. So now many are concerned. perhaps this is a crisis of performance halls. So maybe all of the offline performances will move on online. But I beg to differ. Of course, Ms. Peck earlier also mentioned this, but yes, the performance halls will exist because the real thing has to exist. But then I believe that it is going to be more mutually complementary, so we would continue to grow together with each other.
다양한 플랫폼이 생길 거라고.
And second, I believe that this is going to give rise to many different types of platform. Today, most of the performance groups or the performance halls, they do not have streaming or broadcasting technologies. So I believe that they will be trying to overcome the current limitations of the broadcasting or the streaming technology. Of course, not all of these attempts are going to be successful, but I do believe that these attempts will continue to broaden the horizon broaden the landscape of the performance industry. And the third possible change is that the production environment itself might change. So for example, the existing theater might be equipped with better acoustics and better technology so that they will be able to produce better quality videos to be provided online. And also the production method itself could change. And also perhaps the performance format might also change. And the last change that is probable is that such online services could make the performances more accessible to new audience because it takes a lot of time and money to actually go to a performance hall or a concert hall to watch the performance. Now, if we can provide these performances online, then now art is to experience. And once you experience art, then you would seek it out more. So those who experience the performances online might be curious about what it would feel like if they were to experience it offline. So then perhaps this would open up the door for more audience. So this is one careful possibility. And now let me turn to some of the challenges or the issues that we need to solve for online performances to grow. Now, I did mention platforms. And yes, there are going to be many different types of platform to be spawned. And most of the platforms will have to grapple with the question of the revenue model. Unless they can find a solution to this, then the platforms are not going to be sustainable. So the platforms that can have good revenue models are going to be the leaders of the culture and arts industry in the future. And another characteristic about the online performances, I believe, lies in the excellence of the performance itself. Now, some talked about winner takes all. And now for the arts and culture performances, once they're held online instead of offline, then they would be easier to compare. So then people would be seeking out the better quality performances. So then this would also provide the challenge to those involved about how we would be able to improve the quality of the performances. So I believe that that is going to be the challenge for all of us. So we talk about the globalized world, and perhaps the online performances are also going to globalize the culture and arts industry. And the third point that I would like to make is about copyright. Yes, this was also touched upon by Ms. Peck earlier, but then the copyright. So I would say that in this case, for the online, we need to have a broader definition of copyright, more so than the offline performances. So we need to have the awareness among the artists, and we also need to have a standardized model about copyright for online performances as well. And last point is how we are going to give the audience a sense of the real thing. Now, I did mention that the online services might open up the door for more potential audience, but then now for this potential audience, now then once they actually do come to the performance halls, then what kind of experience are they going to have? And how are we going to give them a more memorable experience? So then, in order to make this possible, we need to turn the environment into a better environment. All right, thank you very much. So that was President Kim Sung-kyu of Sejong Center. Thank you very much for sharing the case of Seoul. And now we will continue with the performances.
Yes, we will invite Ms. Jordana Leigh, Director of the David Rubenstein Atrium at Lincoln Center. will present her comments through a pre-recorded video.
I'm the director of the David Rubenstein Atrium in New York City. I want to thank our moderator, Baik. I also want to thank Seoul Metropolitan Government and Mayor Baik. And I'm really thrilled that this conversation is happening and that we as a global community are thinking about how we can continue to support the mission of the arts and to keep each other connected and to keep our society and our humanity intact, even we are so separated from each other physically. Being in New York, I want to acknowledge the loss and the hardship that we have all experienced here in New York. It is pretty overwhelming, and some days I still try to understand what's happening. And what gives me hope and what gives me resilience is music, is performance, is the art. When I need something to raise my spirits, to make me smile, it's a performance, it's a song, it's seeing an artist connect with me, even if it's through my phone. And I know that we are all in the same boat of trying to figure out how we support our communities. Lincoln Center, like so many cultural organizations in New York and across the world, has been trying to figure out how we support our community, how we maintain a relationship with our audiences, and what the role of the arts can be now in this particular climate, in this pandemic. We at Lincoln Center, like many of our other colleagues, immediately started to go into our archives, share some of that work online, find treasures that people might not have been able to see for years. And so this was a chance for us to not only celebrate our community and our culture, but really to also give some gems that maybe we hadn't been able to share for a long time. After that, within a few days of realizing that we were, a few days of going into a kind of unofficial lockdown, but called pause, but really meaning that we would stay at our homes. Anyone who could work at home must work at home, only essential workers going out and about. And that's where we are still today. We're still in a pause. Lincoln Center recognized that many families were going to be in the house together. School was going to go online. Parents were going to be working at home. Students are going to be trying to learn. And we thought, what could we do to support these families and our community? So one of the very first initiatives we did at Lincoln Center was to start a program called Concerts for Kids. And that has been a real joy to watch. It's been artists working, making about 20-minute performances that then are shared on our social media channels and our website, and they are designed for families of all generations. We've had artists who represent Pakistan and Trinidad and Puerto Rico and American folk singer-songwriters, all really coming out of New York City, being the diverse international city we are. But we've had artists of all walks participate in our family concerts, and we've seen wonderful turnout from audiences watching these concerts, and it's been just really a joy. And they're interactive. Our education team creates a small packet to go with them that you can find online that helps families think of different interactive ways to engage these performances, and that's been wonderful. Another thing that we've done is that we started a pop-up classroom, and that was probably the very first thing we did. And that was our teaching artist creating activities and workshops on Facebook Live for young people. And again, that was another way to support families, to support working parents, and to also supplement some of the elements that children were missing in school. So we've had kids learn how to write a song. We've had kids learn theatrical performance or a dance. And it's been really wonderful to see those comments and to have real-time connections. We've been thinking about our community, and especially being in New York City, and how we've lost so many people. Tens of thousands of people have died who are from New York. And New York, America alone has lost 100,000 people. And what I think is the hardest thing of that is that we can't come together and gather and say goodbye to our loved ones, and we can't support each other and our family members in this time of loss. And it's been something that we at Lincoln Center have been really thinking about, of how, again, the arts can support our community and to do something that would allow a little bit of that space for grief and a little bit of that space for healing. And in collaboration with Jazz at Lincoln Center, we came up with the concept of Memorial for Us All, which is a concert series that is dedicated to those that we lost. And it is a chance for us to gather collectively through music and to honor those who've passed. We have had, I believe, over 1,700 names submitted to us, and each week with a different concert, we add the names of those who've been lost into the concert. So the first concert was by Wynton Marsalis, and throughout the concert, there was a section where we actually were able to print and publish all of the names of that concert, in that concert. The second performance was by Yo-Yo Ma, and we had so many names, unfortunately, that we ended up finding a way to incorporate the names throughout the performance. But it's become a real tribute to those who've lost, and it's become incredibly meaningful for those family members who are trying to sustain some type of connection and community. And we've all had personal losses, and it's been very, very powerful to see your father, your brother, your friend, your sister, your mother's name on this concert, and to know that they are part of something bigger. So that's been something that we did immediately as well. Those are concerts that have been made in people's homes, some of them individually, some of them as a group of artists together, and we're still making them. And I hope that this series, while it's been powerful and important, does come to an end, because it means that we are no longer experiencing that loss. Lincoln Center is continuing to figure out how we can play a role in our community now, how we can use the arts to keep us moving forward, to support those emotional needs. And we are continuously thinking about how, even though we're virtual, how do we represent all of our city? How do we give a platform for voices that are marginalized even more now than ever? And so it is something that we are constantly thinking about. Where are we moving forward? What will we be doing? And, as we start to think about our summer, which is usually our busiest time, how do we maintain those relationships? What can we do? We have a lot of unanswered questions, and we have a lot of creative ideas, and we're currently trying to figure that and put those out to the community. We are leaving no stone unturned, and we're very open to how we share art at this moment. Sometimes it might be only shared through social media channels. Sometimes it's only shared through our website. But we're really thinking about how we provide art, how do we provide work for free for our community, and maintain our mission of serving New York City and the world. And so I really look forward to watching this and hearing from everyone else and learning from you of what we can do and how we can continue to better our place and our community. And I really, truly hope that very soon this will be something for the history books and something we can tell our grandchildren, and not something that we're currently living in. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I very much look forward to connecting with you, and I hope to see you in person one day soon. Thank you.
네, 감사드립니다. 이렇게 뉴욕시의 사례까지.
Yes, thank you very much. That was the current situation from New York. Thank you.
또 스웨덴의 사례를 공유해 주실
And next, we will move on to the case of Sweden to be delivered by Ms. Petra Frank. And now I would like to ask you to be brief for the sake of time.
Yes, thank you. Good day, everyone, and thank you for being invited to this place. It's I want to give my gratitude to the organizer of this seminar, but also to the mayor. It's a very important forum where we need to discuss this. My name is Petra Frank, and I'm the head of the Department of the Academy of Music and Drama at the University of Gothenburg. Today I will briefly speak to you about the current situation of arts and culture in Sweden since the outbreak of COVID-19. I must say that what we already heard here on the conference is completely reminiscent of the situation in Sweden. In this presentation, I will first describe to you some of the aspects of Swedish culture policy and what COVID-19 has meant for the Swedish culture life. Here is the culture, the description of the Swedish Council and the government's authority task. They implement the Swedish culture policy. And according to the policy, Swedish culture policy is to promote the following points. Opportunities for everyone to experience culture, education, and develop their creativity abilities. Quality and artistic renewal, a dynamic culture heritage that is preserved, used, and developed. International and intercultural exchange and cooperation in the culture sphere. Equal access to arts and culture for children and youth. And we will get back to these points later when we will look at what COVID-19 has meant for arts and culture in Sweden. To get the photos on the same time. This is from my Academy of Music and Drama in Gothenburg before COVID-19. As you see, lots of people. So Sweden had its first COVID-19 in January, and the country has famously opted out for lockdowns, but we have had many government restrictions and regulations. These has meant that all cultural events such as exhibition and concert have been cancelled. It has also meant restriction on how many people can visit museums and galleries. And by mid-March, all universities' education had to be online. For my institution, that meant going from 5% online education to 100%. Yes, we have had individual lesson, group sessions, indie pop festival, even a doctoral dissertation online. So this is our organ classroom. And as you see, there is no audience there. And when the rest of society went online, so did the culture institution. Art galleries and museums have created the possibility to visit the museum in videos or in virtual reality system. Theaters and concert halls have published old performances online, like we already heard here, that many of you have done, and through the public service, media, and some have been shown through platforms of their own. Certain theaters have also created specialized platforms to see what you can normally not see when you're at the performance. For such thing as what happens behind, under, over the scene, and the process of creating art. There has been panel discussion, chat forums, question and answer chats, and has created a more, would I say, interactive experience of participating in art. In my mind, this has been possible for two reasons in Sweden. Firstly, Sweden already had a good infrastructure for going online, both in technology, money, but also know-how. Secondly, the Swedish state has also given out large amounts of resources now with the current situation to culture sector to be able to survive this crisis. That has enabled these culture institutions to continue to work. Here you see my country. It's a long country, very far away. And let's see, where am I now? Sorry for so first. And what we have seen so far is an increased demand of viewing culture online. Yes, it has also in Sweden been a success with a lot of audience participating in all these events. It can be explained by the larger reach culture have gotten. Both geographically, we have reached out to a far more bigger audience, as people live, as you see in my country, in different parts. And we can now reach them far away. But also sociological, as people who might not normally be in contact or have the possibility to buy tickets for culture, now have also had a better access to it. And in addition to this, there is an element of intercultural and international cooperation, as people from all over the world can reach Swedish arts and culture. And of course, like we are doing now, vice versa. Gothenburg Symphony Orchestra, which we can see the side here from their website, they have also done all these things. So looking back at the points set out by the Swedish Art Council, we can see that at least from one perspective, the COVID-19 crisis have helped the institutions to better comply with the goals set out. It has forced culture institutions to rethink how they get accessed and help them to further digitalization. That said, I will also say that the situation for artists and people working in culture, especially freelancers, is very grim. That is the other side of the situation. A lot of the material that has been published is old material or reused, which means that fewer people are needed. At least in Sweden, the majority of the online resources have been totally free. It is problematic. But maybe less in Sweden due to the fact that a lot of the culture institution and state-owned are sponsored. But we need to look into this economy situation. I personally do think that these online solutions will not compete with the traditional ways of accessing culture. However, I do believe that we have learned a lot during this crisis, with increasing reach and accessibility due to online resources, as well as increasing interactivity with the audience, and that is worth keep exploring. So digital presentation can work well as a complement to the traditional medium. And here we have also this is the Symphony of Gothenburg, the former was the Gothenburg House of Opera. So another point which is in accordance to the spirit of the motto, Together we stand, is that digitalization has increased the accessibility of culture over borders. That is very good. And there is always something special with a live performance. It's powerful, it's moving. So I think the audience and everyone will come back. So I say, like the Folkteater in Gothenburg say, we love the audience and we miss you. Thank you.
네, 감사합니다. 페트라 프랭크 학장님의 발표까지 저희가 청해 들어봤고요. 이어서
Alright, thank you very much, Petra. And now we will move on to the next presentation.
이어서는 파리
Now, Mr. Christophe Girard, Deputy Mayor from the City of France, will be presenting about the case of non-face-to-face performances in Paris. I do apologize, we don't have too much time, so please be a bit brief. Sorry.
After waiting an hour, I hope I have some minutes to speak. Good morning. Agneon Gaseyo to everyone. When the crisis started and France was locked down overnight, the first decision we took, the mayor and myself, was to tell institutions who had programs and who are receiving public funds to make sure they would pay the fees and the salaries to all the artists who had been planned. So they were all protected for all of those who had actually, theater plays, concerts planned for the coming month, which means for the season of summer. That was the first decision. The second decision, that was on March 15th. Actually, the evening of the first round of local elections. So it was a very strange situation for us, candidates and running for re-election. The second decision was during 2 months of total lockdown and confinement, compulsory and imposed by the state, that I was meeting every day through, I would say, between 8 and 10 meetings. Most organization, cultural organization, which means our museums, our theaters, our public libraries, and Paris, the city owns 14 museums, 18 conservatories, 70 public libraries, and 20 theaters and cultural centers, so which means a lot of people. And so after the first measure to make sure that the artists were protected and at least were receiving salaries and minimum wages, the second decision was to organize the coming summer. Of course, we didn't know how long would last the confinement, but I preferred that they had an option of reopening in July or August. And we discovered that actually with the crisis going down and confinement being over, that most of our theaters now can reopen. The movie theaters will be reopening in 10 days. Our public libraries have started to reopen and people are starting to come, of course, with rules very strict about health security. So the last decision took was to vote a special fund of 15 million euros to protect artists and institutions in the private sector to make sure that they would not collapse. So this fund was voted in emergency. And also I proposed that it was voted unanimously to have a summer, an August month of culture for Paris, which means there will be local small festivals of concerts, of acrobacy, of lecturing, of music, I said, of dancing, of a lot of performances in our parks and public gardens, which means that there is a public appeal for artists to apply, and a jury will select, as many projects as we can to make sure that artists are back to work and will be paid. So it was an opportunity, instead of being completely depressed and stopped, to actually invest money. So 15 million euros just for the 3 months of crisis, in addition to the large budget of the city for culture, which is 500 million euros, was a way to reassure that culture in Paris would be absolutely compulsory and necessary for the life of our people. And one of the reasons that pushed me to take the decision was the fact that there will be many people not going away for summer holidays, for different reasons, either because they have no money and they lost their jobs, or because they are afraid of contamination possible in the coming weeks or coming months. So this is mainly what we did, being close to all artists and institutions, music, dance, theater, paintings, galleries, libraries, during those 2 months of confinement, make a decision of budget emergency, and organize a month of culture during the month of August. That's my short intervention. 감사합니다.
Thank you. 네, 감사드립니다. 이렇게 저희가 파리시의 사례까지 살펴봤고요.
Yes, thank you very much. We do apologize for the limited time. And we are not going to be able to have our joint discussions that were originally planned at the end. But nonetheless, we'll invite last words from Mr. Yu An-sik. Please go ahead.
뭐 오늘 정말 이렇게 해외에서 많은
All right, now thank you. So yes, we have invited many speakers from abroad. Thank you very much for the excellent comments, and we've also had great insights and comments from the domestic speakers. And it was about how we are going to continue supporting the art and culture industry in the post-COVID era, how to continue to protect the industry, and also how we can further develop the online performance sector. So highly meaningful, and thank you very much, because it is also helpful for our policy-making process. So I do hope that we can continue to develop the online performance industry so that we will be able to share this with all of us.
For joining us today. And actually, we are all in hardship, but I hope this will be another opportunity for the future culture and art industry to develop further through innovative attempts. Thank you very much for your time today, and this concludes today's session. And ladies and gentlemen, we will continue with the 9th session from 6 p.m. Korea time. So we'd like to ask for your active participation as well. Thank you.